Good morning. There we go. Yes. Good morning. Sorry about that. My name is Pastor Cory, and obviously I don't know how to work a microphone. Welcome to worship this morning. I'm one of the pastors on staff. And before we get into talking about deconstruction, which is the subject of our series here that we're ending up, I want to share with you a very important message, and that is the goofy things that people say and do. Okay, so have you ever been trying to find a friend's house? You've never been to their house before. They give you the address, and you've gotten to the street, and you're looking for the house number on each of the houses. And you're squinting, you're trying to find it, and some houses have it, some houses don't. And so you're looking really hard. This happened to my wife and I. We were going down the street, we're trying to find this house. And as we're going, I'm trying to see it, and so I turn down the radio. And my wife goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm turning down the radio so I can see better." Why do we do that? That is so weird. One day we were going to the grocery store, and because we're going to go get food for groceries, I realized I needed to take chicken out of the freezer. And so I said, "Hold on, honey, one moment. I'm going to take the chicken out of the freezer." My wife doesn't cook. I do all the cooking. And so I open up the freezer. I take the package of frozen chicken breasts out, and I put it on a plate, and I set it on the counter. And I go, "Thank you for doing that. I had to take the chicken out for supper tonight so it'll unthaw and be ready by the time we get there." And I look at my wife, and she's got this quizzical look on her face, and she's shaking her head. And I said, "What? What did I do?" She said, "You want to unthaw that chicken?" And I said, "Yes, that's why I pulled it out." She said, "If you want to unthaw that chicken, then put it back in the freezer." "What do you mean?" She goes, "If you want the chicken to be ready for supper, then you want to thaw it. Amen. If you want to unthaw it, you put it back in the freezer." I was unimpressed. I had realized my entire life I had said unthaw. My entire family said unthaw. And so I would be more embarrassed, except for half of you in here say unthaw too. That's wrong. One day I was reading an article about sayings that we have, weird sayings that we have. And one of the weird sayings that came across was a saying that I've said forever, used about other people, never about myself. Actually, I probably would have said, I would probably say this about my friend Chris. I would say this about my friend Chris. I would say that he has picked himself up by his bootstraps, right? He's picked himself up by his bootstraps. Have you heard that? Have you used that saying before? So today, I want to demonstrate that. Okay? Today, I wore I do a cowboy wedding once a year boots. Okay? I only wear them once a year. So I'm going to, see my boots, aren't they so nice? They're like 100 years old, but since I only wear them once a year, they look brand new. I'm going to demonstrate, I'm going to try this out, right? So pulling yourself up by your bootstraps means you're successful. You've done it yourself. So I'm going to try this. Okay, you ready? Oh, man. I turned 50 this year. This is getting harder and harder. Okay, you ready? I'm going to pull myself up by my bootstraps. Ready? Here we go. Wait a sec. How does this work? You can't do it. I can't do it. Okay. Oh. Somebody want to help me? Anybody want to help me? Hello? Oh, hi. Oh, all right. Oh, yes, thank you. Woo! Yes, thank you. Oh, wow. I am going to turn 50 this year. It's getting harder and harder to do. All right. You can't do it. You literally cannot. I'll pull this down in case somebody's sensibilities are hurt. You cannot pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And actually what had happened was when this saying was first coined, when it first came about, it actually meant it is impossible to do a task by yourself. That's what it meant. That is what it meant. When you were faced with a task that was impossible to do on your own, then someone would say, boy, you're going to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. It's impossible. You cannot do it. And I needed help to get up, right? So what has happened was our American culture, which celebrates success by individuals clawing their way to the top all by themselves, has changed the saying from meaning it's impossible to celebrating something a Lone Ranger doing it on their own. I call this the John Wayne effect. I'm going to do it on my own with some swagger. For those of you who are too young, it's the John Wick effect. They're both John, it works, okay? We do it independently and on your own. Now, I would love to say that this thinking in our cultural thinking has not crept into Christianity, has not stained Christianity. But I'm afraid it has. For some of you, your favorite poem, you probably have it up in your house somewhere, more than likely in the bathroom. I don't know why it always ends up in the bathroom, but up in the bathroom is the Footprints in the Sand poem, right? It's a picture of footprints in the sand. And it talks about how I was walking along and there were two sets of footprints, me and Jesus. And then along the way, there were no longer two sets of footprints, but only one. It was Jesus carrying me. Wrong. That is our American culture that has infiltrated the Christian thinking. Do you want to know how it should be? I will tell you how the poem should go. Across the beach were thousands of footprints. And then I stumbled and fell, and my footprint stopped because Jesus was carrying me, along with thousands of other people that were going together in community. That is how the poem should be. You see, as we take this moment to reconstruct everything that we've deconstructed, we've encouraged you to look at your faith, to pull it apart. And some of you have. Some of you have come up to me and said, you know what? I have lived my entire faith based on what my parents believed. And I have never really believed it for myself. And so by deconstructing, you've helped me realize what I believe, not what they believe. But here's the thing about deconstruction. You can deconstruct, we want you to deconstruct, but you gotta put it back together. You gotta build something again. If you just leave it, then you have just destroyed your faith. So, what guide can we use to put this back together? How can we do this? Knowing that our culture wants us to be John Waynes or John Wicks and do this on our own, and it's just me and Jesus. And for some people, it's, I'm the pilot, Jesus is the co-pilot. That's just all kinds of wrong there. The Sermon on the Mount is a sermon that is a set of Jesus' sayings found in the New Testament where in Matthew and Luke. It's a gathering of his sayings. It's a sermon given to the crowds, and it's a sermon given to us. Our culture has us read the Bible, read Jesus' words, read the Sermon on the Mount as individuals thinking individually. It is our American culture to do this. But Jesus never intended this because in his culture, everything was done in community. So when we read the Sermon on the Mount, it is read in community. I don't know about you, but I have had some enemies in my life. And there's no way I could forgive them without your help. Oh, yes, I have Jesus. Absolutely, I have Jesus. But there's no way I can do it by myself. To love others, to move, to forgive, to stand. We were never meant to be Christians on our own. Christianity does not work when you do it on your own. And so in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus gives us as almost like building material All of the sayings about forgiveness, all the sayings about living, loving, forgiving, what happens when we pray, all of this building material, and we begin to rebuild after we've deconstructed, we begin to construct a faith, not based on John Wayne or American culture, but based on God's love and the community of believers. Did you know in the early days that they were not called Christians? Do you know what they were called? Nobody? In this room is not a bunch of Christians, but a bunch of saints who followed the way. In the early days of Christianity, that's what it was. It was a bunch of saints following the way. And as we build together, rebuild our faith into this building, we build it upon the foundation and rock of Jesus. You see, in the Sermon on the Mount, after he talks about all the building material we're supposed to use to rebuild our faith, he comes to an illustration of where that building stands. Okay, we find this in the book of Luke, in chapter 7. And I'll take it now. Or whenever you get around to it. There we go. I will show you what it's like when someone comes to me, listens to my teaching, and then follows it. It's like a person building a house who digs deep and lays the foundation on solid rock. When the floodwaters rise and break against that house, it stands firm because it is well built. But anyone who hears and doesn't obey is like a person who builds a house right on the ground without a foundation. When the floods sweep down against that house, it will collapse into a heap of ruins. You see, that house that's built, it can be seen two ways. It can be seen two ways. It could be seen that all the building material that Jesus has talked about within the Sermon on the Mount is built, put together, and this is your faith, and it's built on the rock, the solid rock of Jesus Christ, so that when life happens and it buttresses against the house does not fall. But there's another way to see it. And that each of those pieces of that house that are put together and built on the rock are individuals who make up the community of believers. You see, this is Legacy United Methodist. This is Legacy Church. And I'm not talking about the building. This building could be anything. I've often thought this would be the best place to build an indoor climbing wall. It would be so awesome. It would be a lot of fun. This building could be anything. It could be a place to store boats and campers. It could be a place where they sell used cars. It could be a place where people do art and make paintings in different corners. This building could be anything. And it is not the church. Legacy is not this building. Legacy is you. Brick by brick, piece by piece, the church, the building is you in community, a community of believers. You see, as a community of believers, built together with the foundation of Jesus Christ beneath you, together, when life happens, and life happens, people die. People lose jobs. Surgeries happen. Things happen. And when those waves hit together, those waves go right around the building because together we stand on the rock. Now, my brother and I, we had built another kind of building. We were on a bowling team, and my brother and I, we were unbeatable. My brother was the best bowler, and I was the worst bowler. So we were unbeatable, right? For those of you who are bowling, you understand, I had a huge handicap, right? Nobody could beat us. And so we had a community built on a bowling league. But when the waves hit and life happens, that house disintegrates because it is built on nothing but our enjoyment of bowling. But as a community, in our faith built together, held together as a community, doing life together, forgiving together, loving together, being together, taking the waves together, built on the foundation of Jesus Christ, we stand firm in Him and together. You cannot do your faith alone. I had someone come up to me once and say, "Oh, Pastor, I would come to church, but I go fishing, and out on the boat, I commune with God." Yeah, right. Yeah, sure you do. Sure you do. And my friend, when I told him, I knew exactly who this was. And if you're watching, hello. And what happened when he was diagnosed with Crohn's disease? When he was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, and his intestines had to be taken out, and he had a bag put in. Sitting out on the boat by yourself all of a sudden didn't do it. But practicing a faith in community, we were all together, living together, suffering together, living together, pushing together. All of a sudden, he felt loved, supported in a way that a walleye and a fishing rod just can't do it. Now, through this deconstruction, some of you have probably come to some light bulb moments where you've realized something needs to change, or this isn't right and I need to change this, or my belief about Jesus is something went wrong here, but now I believe correctly. This morning you may have had that moment where you're like, you know what? I've been living John Wayne, John Wick life. I've been doing this by myself, and I realize now that I cannot. I need to do it in community. I'm going to give you an opportunity to symbolically say, I am going to live in community. Now, before some of you get scared, especially my introvert wife, you don't have to do this, all right? But I'm giving you the opportunity that if you want to symbolically say, yes, my faith is done in community and I'm part of this community, then I invite you to take a brick that I, by trademark, cannot say over the internet, and grab it and add it to this building. Because this symbolizes us as Christians, as a Christian community, that we're not independent and are on our own. But when life happens, and it happens, together we will face it. Together we will live in His love. Together we will stand on the foundation of His rock. And we will survive. So, I just want to take a moment. Oh, she's here already. Okay. Last time she had a sprint up front. It was funny. So, I'm just going to take a moment because this is not a mandatory thing. If you want to come up and grab a brick and add it to this, showing that you're part of the community, I invite you to do that now.
Amen. Nothing like an end of sermon prayer with Legos. That is very cool.